On Banger's original heavy metal family tree, we made one branch for doom metal. But if we've discovered anything on Lock Horns, it's that one branch is never enough. Beyond the traditional doom of St. Vitus and Reverend Bazaar, lurk bands mixing stoner, sludge, drone, gothic, and other forms of slow and heavy music. And in one of its darkest corners lies a style called Death Doom. Death Doom is a bastard hybrid. It mixes the spooky atmosphere of doom with the rhythms of death metal. It's a style often associated with UK bands from the early 90s, like Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride, and Anathema. But Death Doom is one of metal's most global subgenres, with important bands also coming from Scandinavia and the USA. And it has continued to grow, spreading alongside Funeral Doom and even Blackened Doom into an ever-tangled web of bands who worship Sabbath in their own unique ways. This is getting complicated. But hey, if metal was simple, we wouldn't have a show. So today on Lock Horns, we fall deeper into Doom with a debate on the essential bands of Death Doom. Welcome back to Lock Horns, Banger TV's live weekly metal debate show straight from the Banger Bar. A reminder, as always, if you're watching this in the archive, we do go live every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And big news, we just cracked the 75K subscriber mark. Thanks to everyone. Help us get to 100K as well. So this week, we're tackling the first hybrid genre in the sense that it's the first one that actually has a slash in it. We're digging even deeper into the heavy metal family tree. It's Death Doom, and to help me with that exercise is actually Lock Horns' first comedian, Blayne Smith. How are you, man?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the show. How'd you get into metal? Let's start there. Give me that story.
I mostly got into metal by being a childhood nerd.
Yes.
I guess. Worked in a comic book store for most of my childhood life. Played a lot of Warhammer, and Warhammer kind of just leads into metal. I mean, you straight up just have Bolt Thrower to listen to when you're playing Warhammer because it's a band about Warhammer. So it was a pretty easy transition from that. You know, if you're a nerd, what album are you gonna pick up? The one with a straight up Tolkien name? Okay, cool, yeah. Every city in Middle Earth has a band. Every pass, every place. So
that's right.
It's a pretty natural progression.
And then what about this thing we're calling Death/Doom? Like, how did you get into this style of metal particularly?
Death Doom was kind of just an accident, I guess. I didn't even realize it was Death Doom when I first started listening to it because I like Doom a lot. I like death metal, not as much, but I like death metal as well.
Right.
But the problem with Doom metal is how do you get things done when you're listening to Doom metal? You know, like you can be sad at home and listen to some Doom metal, but sometimes you need to be sad at the bank, and then sad getting groceries, and then you need to be sad making dinner, and you know, maybe sad ball hockey afterwards.
Right.
Adding the death into the Doom gives you the ability to actually get some stuff done with it.
That's right. You gotta get the release valve on that.
A bit
sadness.
of up-tempo.
Ratchet up. And if you're looking to death metal for reprieve, I think you're pretty twisted by that point.
Yeah, I mean that's more angry. You know, you're kind of you don't want to listen to straight death metal in the bank. You're gonna punch a bank teller.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. Well, as you all know, this is a show which is generated by the comments from everyone out there that's joining us from around the world. And as you know, the exercise on Lock Horns is we want to build the branch that we're adding called Death Doom. So it's important that you tell us why you think that this branch should exist in the first place and who belongs on this particular branch. And I want to give a shout out to everyone that's joining us from around the world. Truly is a global audience on Lock Horns. We've got folks from UK, Scotland, Greece, Finland, Portugal, Austria, Peru, Italy, Spain, Romania, Slovakia, Russia, Norway, New Zealand, Israel, Netherlands, Colombia, Guatemala, Argentina, Mexico, Honduras, Croatia, and Botswana.
Whoa.
Fantastic. Welcome pretty much every continent. I think we got them all covered just about. Welcome to everyone. Welcome also to the person who truly runs Lock Horns, Lisa Ladiseur. Hello.
Happy to be here. I'm here all week. Don't let me out.
And for those that don't know already, she is equipped with the ever so mighty, triumphant cowbell from hell.
We try.
And if you hear that noise, it's time to move on. Okay, well, speaking of moving on, let's set some ground rules with Death Doom, or should it be Doom Death? We'll get into that. Death Doom, what are the hallmarks of this style of metal in your opinion?
Okay, so I think the thing that Death Doom does really well is it takes sort of the best part of both genres and kind of combines them. I mean, it's still very much doom metal sonically. The sounds, the guitar tone, is going to really sound doomy, but then you're going to integrate some death metal rhythmically.
Yep.
So the vocals, which in death metal are kind of just an instrument instead of someone singing,
exactly.
And the drums are going to sound a lot more like they're from a death band, but at the same time, thematically, and then like an album cover is still probably going to look like a doom metal band.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I mean, it's clearly that heavy metal is evolving because, you know, back when death metal started, you know, these were two clearly distinct paths. But I guess over time, bands have started to borrow from each side. So
and it's kind of cool because, like, you know, if you love doom, you can still admit that sometimes the worst doom band is kind of like Twilight fan fiction. And the worst death band is like, I don't want to hear about rape that much. That's weird. I don't need that on the record. So I find the kind of two extremes kind of make it so you're not going to get those two extremes as much in there when you combine these styles.
Yeah.
It keeps out the jocks and it keeps out the guys that are too sad.
Well, I mean, I'm going to make a case either for the fact that we need, I don't know, Death Doom. It's not the best sounding subgenre on the heavy metal tree. I don't know. Doom Death sounds, maybe it's got a bit of a smoother ring to it, but hey, we'll take it. We'll move on. People accept it. So
Before we move on, I want to know about the punctuation. I'm like a grammar nerd and like a copy nerd.
Right.
And I see it with a dash, but I also see it with a slash, both of which are silent. I like the slash. What's the deal though? Like,
if we said the slash should be very death metal. I mean, it should be death slash doom.
Yeah, death
metal wins.
It does sound pretty good. But then you get the problem where when you list death slash doom, is it like they're playing death metal and doom metal sometimes, or are they actually combining the styles?
Right.
Because you go on Metallum and then you look at a band and there's 6 slashes there because it's like, okay, what's Triptychon? I don't know. Let's just put a bunch of slashes in.
Yeah. It's not like one song's a death metal song, one song's a doom metal song. Bands are actively combining both of those elements into a single song, of course. Okay, fine. We'll move on. We've got some ground rules. A little bit of doom, a little bit of the moodiness and the doom, the guitar tone, but also bringing in some of the aggression and at times, I guess, maybe some of the speed and the guttural attack of death metal. But as we like to do on Lock Horns, we like to establish the legend.
we do.
Yes.
And sometimes the legend is super obvious. Sometimes it's not, but it's the one band. It's kind of like Survivor. It has like an immunity idol over it. We decide that this band is going on the chart and no one can vote it off. And after much debate and a Twitter poll and a bunch of things, we settled on Paradise Lost.
There you go, Paradise Lost. Classic band, been around for a long, long time. I remember I walked into a record store in the UK when I was there as a teenager and I bought the first Paradise record on vinyl and loved it. And that, of course, was the time when Paradise Lost was arguably very much a death metal band. But anyway, tell me about Paradise Lost. Why are they so important, Blayne?
Okay, Paradise Lost, there's the Peaceville 3 are 3 bands on Peaceville that were kind of the biggest bands that have ever really played that style. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're not really famous for playing that style, but Paradise Lost is the obvious choice of those 3, I think, because they're the ones that actually stuck the closest to Death Doom without going crazy too quick. And I guess the last record they released, Plague Within, I think, is kind of a return back to the style a little bit for them.
Right.
So,
but a band that clearly evolved from that very first record, Lost Paradise.
Yeah, Lost Paradise. I mean, Lost Paradise and Gothic, I would say, are both great examples of Death Doom and great Death Doom records.
Right.
But then after that, they started getting in their weird kind of Gothic, what are we doing? I don't know. I don't know what Gothic rock means, but
right.
Gothic rock, I guess. and that's going to be a big theme for all of these. All of these bands started in a place and then kind of branched out.
Sure.
And so it's kind of hard to set a legend. I have a different legend I would set because I mean, they released one album and broke up, which is a convenient way to never...
Later!
We'll get there. Getting ahead of ourselves. Park that. We are going to get into that mysterious band that Blayne thinks is critical to the story of Death Doom. But before we do that, let's see what the board has to say about Paradise Lost. Here we go. Michael Montoya, welcome back. Paradise Lost should be the legend. They really brought gothic metal to a death metal place. That combo changed the gothic metal and death metal scene a lot. Their influences have carried really heavily. Okay, Hannah Klein says, the first band that comes to mind is Paradise Lost, unifying the brutality of death metal with the dark atmosphere and slow, heavy rhythms of doom metal. Well put. On albums such as the legendary Gothic, Blayne mentioned, their latest work, The Plague Within, has lost none of its heaviness. Okay, Gabriel Fernandez says, when I think about Death Doom, the first band that comes to mind is Paradise Lost. They were one of the first to produce this kind of music, and both Lost Paradise and Gothic are legendary albums in the genre. Moving on, Thijs Striefkerk says, definitely Paradise Lost. They are one of the few bands that still do today what they did in the 90s. Sure, they've had a lesser period, but they're back. The Plague Within is my favorite album within the genre. Okay, lots of love for the new Paradise Lost album. Ikiriophyte. Paradise Lost should be here because of their legendary status in the genre and their efforts to push it in new directions, even if they pushed it to the point of exiting the genre later on. Okay, and Matthew Levins says Paradise Lost could be the legend, but I agree that their later output strips them of that accolade. Okay, well, some small exceptions. I think we've got some unanimity there that people agree that these guys deserve to be at the top of the story. Yeah?
Well, those are the ones I'm listening to anyway.
Yes.
I told you she ran the show. But we do have comments from on other bands. Lisa, do we want to get into this?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like we can't talk about Paradise Lost without weighing them against My Dying Bride.
Okay. My Dying Bride. Before I go to the board, Blayne, give me your thoughts on this band.
Again, first two records, As the Flower Withers and Turn Loose the Swans. Great albums, Death Doom sounding, but even by Turn Loose the Swans, which is a hilarious thing to have to keep saying out loud, you could already hear where they're going. Turn Loose the Swans is still one of my favorite albums in the genre, but again, this is a band, two records in, and they're like, okay, cool, we did it, where are we going now?
Right.
So, great band, first two records, awesome, and the other records they put out a bunch more really good records, but those ones are ones where you would kind of say, these are a really different sound.
Right, interesting. Well, it might be a theme here. I guess it's a theme. All genres of metal and music bands move on, but it seems to be a theme here. First couple of records, and then there can be quite a dramatic evolution in new directions. Here we go to the board. So, Michael Lopez says yes. Paradise Lost was the first band to play this kind of music, but they drifted away from this sound a lot after their first record, while My Dying Bride are still playing Death Doom. As the Flower Withers, Turn Loose the Swans, it is ridiculous to say even once, and The Dreadful Hours are classics of the genre. James Murphy, great name, I put My Dying Bride next to Paradise Lost. All I am saying, they're both guilty of lesser albums. Fair enough. All bands probably are. Nicholas Daranche says My Dying Bride should be on number 2. The first albums are as heavy as fuck. And Raphael Fireblade says My Dying Bride is a must. Their album As the Flowers Wither is one of the most talented albums in the genre and huge for Peaceville Records at the time. Yeah, interesting. There's very much a label story here, as you mentioned, Blayne. Corey Che McGilligot. Good name. Much as I love My Dying Bride and as influential as they might be on Death Doom, I'm going to argue putting them in the genre might be putting a square peg in a round hole. These guys were certainly influential, but I think their sound is a little too broad. There's a difference between dark anger and dark melancholy. Okay, My Dying Bride has all the elements of Death Doom, but they're not Death Doom. Okay, there's something else. And lastly, Hari Desikachari says, the tree is primarily about influence. Good point. And My Dying Bride are inarguably influential to the creation of Death Doom. Any comments on those?
Yeah, I mean, again,
thoughts?
we're kind of coming through the same way, right?
Yeah.
Again, these bands are It's weird. They're the influencers, but there was still other bands kind of making death doom at the time. It's really complicated when we're getting down this far into what is this style of weird mashup.
And also, I mean, when you've got a style of metal that in itself is a hybrid, you're sort of opening yourself up for like how much is it of each and blah blah blah. It's much easier with black metal where it's either fucking black metal or not.
Yes. Or not anymore. Is it black metal or is it hipster black metal?
Definitely, there are no good examples of that anymore in metal. Lisa, what are people saying out there?
Well, normally we go to the guest choice right away, but
one more.
There's one more. People are like, how could you be 15 minutes into the show and you haven't mentioned this band?
Yeah,
so
let's talk about this band, and you're going to have to bring out the cowbell from hell, because why? I brought my Severed Survival vinyl and my Mental Funeral vinyl. Why? Because I'm a death metal fan. Don't know if I'm a death doom fan. But anyway, here we go. Autopsy, and then I'll come to you, Blayne. Levy McIntyre. To me, the legend should be Autopsy. They started earlier than all the other bands. While Severed Survival was more of a death metal album, it did have moments of doom within. But once Mental Funeral came out, the doom elements were more present. Again, another peaceful band. Important to mention, thrash hard. Autopsy should be the legend because they are responsible for making hundreds of bands aware that it is possible to be a death metal band without blasting above 200 BPMs. Carne Verde says Autopsy is the brutal US version of death doom. I'd say that Obituary could qualify by that standard. Definitely the lines are blurring here for me. Jamie McDonald, I have to throw Autopsy into the mix. They really brought that slow grind into early death metal. If they aren't on this list, they should at least be above it as a precursor. Okay, maybe a proto death doom band. And R.O. Tiranen says Autopsy is the legend. It was the first band to mix death metal with doom. Blayne.
Yeah,
Autopsy.
This is the thing. Autopsy is a great band for this that I really like, because at some point, death doom, you're combining elements of the two things.
Yeah.
The reason these guys, I feel like, aren't necessarily the core legend is because they were hitting maybe 80% doom, 20% death metal.
Right.
So they're still really heavily, because you can kind of change the mixture. So Autopsy was way more on the death metal side, but they are kind of the first band to pass that line.
Yeah.
To be on the other side of that line, but then still bringing in the doom, because these guys brought in a bit of death, but not a crazy amount of death, and then they're bringing in a bit of doom, but not a crazy amount of doom.
Well, you know, with Autopsy, I mean, back to '89, Severed Survival, I mean, I bought these records when they came out. I love this sound. I mean, to me at that time, they were a death metal band. It was death metal back then, but I can see in hindsight, I mean, they were definitely evoking a far more it's got that sludgy, super low end, super slow, like you can almost hear the bass string like flapping in the air.
Yeah.
It's got that super low end sound to it, and I guess I can understand why it could be associated with doom metal. We got a few more comments on Autopsy. Federico Solari, come on. Autopsy's not death doom. Nicholas Derange, Autopsy is more classic death metal to my ears. Princess Scarlet says, dude, Autopsy is pure death metal. Why are they even here? Misanthropic God Band says Autopsy does not have that doom atmosphere. If we have Autopsy, then Obituary should be there. I would say, I mean, there is an argument.
I mean, that's not that far off. I mean, I do think the nice thing about having Autopsy here is it's just a reminder that you can go further with the death metal than speeding up your drumming a bit and dropping your voice a little lower.
Okay, we'll leave them there for now.
I don't
Lisa?
see a lot of consensus about this one in the chat.
Okay.
Maybe they should go off to the side and we'll see how things play out. I don't know.
Okay.
It's not a given. I don't know.
Let's create question marks, because why? They're fun. Let's put a question mark under with Autopsy. Definitely some debate. People saying they're a pure death metal band. Some saying they're death doom. We'll let people bash that out. But before we do that, Lisa?
Time for the guest choice.
The guest choice. We need theme music. Guest choice.
That would not be the theme music.
No.
I don't know what that was.
No?
No.
Do you want me to do that again?
Yes.
No, I'm not doing it. Guest choice, Blayne. Here's your moment.
Is this my guest choice for favorite right now or the legend? Can I go to legend instead?
No.
No?
We're going to your jacket.
Okay, all right, all right. So then this is I guess the current legend for me is Hooded Menace.
Okay.
Hooded Menace is a band that is not, they're active now. They're putting out records now, but there's no other way you could describe these guys. I don't think.
Okay.
You sit down, you listen to it. It's the perfect balance. I think it's like a 60-40 mix.
Yeah.
And it strikes me as perfect. The guitar tone is just spooky. It's just the spookiest guitar tone I've ever heard, even if they're just play an open string on their setup, and it's my favorite thing to hear.
No one has heard of this band.
No one has heard of Hooded Menace.
I think before we can go on, we want to play a clip, and then we can get some commentary going back and forth.
So we all know what the fuck Blayne is talking about. Let's check out some Hooded Menace. Here we go. Okay, so they've got hoods. I get it.
Yes, they do the hoods.
No one has heard of this band, but we've got a few comments coming in. One, MQ, is this Blayne's band? LOL.
I wish.
They wore the hood so he could be disguised, so he could get on the show. Jimmy Purvis, fuck yeah, Hooded fucking Menace. Sarah Kitteringham, of course, Banger TV host. Hooded Menace is amazing Finnish death doom. And Count Blagarath says, Hooded Menace are fantastic, massive, suffocating death doom. So some allies.
I thought this was a band that everyone had heard of. Their goddamn records on Discogs are crazy expensive.
Well, I mean, maybe there's a point here. Obviously, we always go to influence as the kind of key criteria if you get to qualify to be part of the canon of heavy metal. So maybe some dispute there. Obviously, they're there early. They crystallize the sound.
Well, they're not there. So they're putting out records now.
Right. Okay.
They're working on a new one right now.
Right.
They've put out 4. All of them have been very well received. Awesome records. They put out splits like every other week with with whatever band they can find.
Yeah.
And they just played with Candlemass. They're on every festival, generally in Europe, a bit here.
Yeah.
Whenever there's any kind of doomy, deathy festival, they're there. I don't know why no one's hearing them.
I think an important thing here I'm getting some clarity on here is that I think what happened, of course, with death metal from an evolutionary perspective is it got extremely technical. It got extremely fast. We need to remember that when death metal started with albums like Severed Survival, Left Hand Path, Slowly We Rot, even the first Death records, it wasn't all that fast.
Yes.
But what happened over time is death metal now has become an uber technical, very, very fast genre of music. And I guess as it went in that direction, the bands that wanted to retain that sort of slow vibe, we possibly could call
I mean, if they came out in '88, you'd probably be like, oh, this is an old school death metal band.
Totally.
Yeah.
So it's making sense to me, Lisa.
Yay!
There's a first for everything on Lockhorns.
We like to teach, we like to learn
Thank
here
you.
on the show.
Yeah, let's do a group hug. Let's not. Okay, we're going to move on to another band?
We are. I mean, there's a good chance that Hooded Menace will fall further down as people jump on top of it. But we're going to go clop back in time a little bit. And now you can talk about the other legend band that you wanted, okay?
Yay!
Since when Blayne get like 3 legend bands to talk about? This is a first. We gotta talk to the board of directors of Lockhorns about this. Go.
It's winter! Yay! All right.
Tell me about winter.
Here's winter's thing. Here's why winter's the legend. I think they're the legend. So winter put out their first album, with their only album, In the Darkness, at the exact same time that Paradise Lost put out Lost Paradise.
Okay.
And Winter, it was just, everything about it to me is Death Doom. You could put it on for an old school death metal fan and they'd be like, oh yeah, this is really good. The band's called Winter. The album cover is just a gray bummer. Like everything about it just screams the genre. The whole thing has that awesome spooky sound.
Yep.
The guitar tone's perfect. It's front to back. Even the like nonsense drawn out are the metal's version of rap skits, you know, just a bunch of nonsense sounds for a little while.
Yes.
Even those are like perfectly in line with where the genre went, I think.
Cool.
Winter, the best.
Winter, let's go to the board. Leonard Reibstein is back. The first band I'd want on here is Winter from the US, inspired by Celtic Frost. They churn out heavy, dark death metal at a glacial pace, a raw alternative to the peace-filled sound. Celtic Frost, interesting point, maybe a bit too fast to belong. Morbid Tales, a bit doomy. Anyway, Rock Static, Winter were total pioneers of death doom. Their only album, released in 1990, had creepy as fuck vocals, classic down-tempo death/doom riffs. I said slash, I'm sorry. And that drum beat was epic. DJ Phillips, not a metal tag, says that Winter capture the genre in name alone. You know what? I'm a deer caught in headlights. I gotta listen to this record. This sounds like something I would dig.
It's a great record.
Fantastic. Okay, here we go. Winter has been added. I was gonna say they should have hardened the T a bit because from a distance it's winger. And I don't think Winter wants that association, but I digress. Lisa, are we moving on from Winter? Where are we going here?
We're moving on. So Sarah Kitteringham, some of you may know from Overkill Reviews here on Banger TV, is our resident Doom expert. And she's in the chat typing furiously because she has things to say. So we actually got a video from her to give us her pick because she couldn't be here today.
Cool. Check out Sarah. She knows what she's talking about. Listen to this.
Hey guys, it's Sarah from Overkill Reviews, and today on Lock Horns, you guys are talking about Death Doom. And this is a genre that's super near and dear to my heart, so I thought I'd throw my hat in the ring for the most important band, and for that I choose Asphyx. Asphyx is a Death Doom band from the Netherlands, and when they started out, they went through a few members, and then they eventually decided to pick up Martin Van Drunen of Pestilence, post-Consuming Impulse fame. Once they got Van Drunen on board, they really found their own, and then they released their debut, The Rack, which is one of the best Death Doom records of all time, really anchored by Van Drunen's incredibly raspy, oft-imitated, never-duplicated vocals. And they went on to do a whole bunch more, including their second classic, Last One on Earth. But yeah, they've got about a dozen records now, and most of them are fantastic. So I definitely recommend that you guys add Asphyx to the list of the most influential Death Doom bands.
Okay, so first of all, Sarah's wearing my shirt. That's Consuming Impulse. Pestilence, fantastic band. Good point with Asphyx. Any thoughts on Asphyx, Blayne?
Awesome. Great band. They like almost had like there was almost like a crust punky hardcore influence sound in there that was like a really nice thing for the genre. And again, the reason I really like this band is they got enough of the death metal in there. They're bringing in enough of the death metal. It's sounding like a true mix and not like a dabbling in other styles.
Right, and of course, Sarah mentioned Martin Van Drunen, arguably one of the best, I would say, death metal vocalists in the history of the genre. That guy just barks forth through the microphone. Fantastic vocalist. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Again, I think listening to like the latest Asphyx record actually just today before the show, retaining that kind of primal, there's a deliberate simplicity to Asphyx's music. And I think it's retaining a much more kind of bludgeoning approach as opposed to just the fretboard gymnastics of a lot of recent extreme metal. I mean, deliberately retaining that more primal vibe.
Yeah, they always. I mean, 4 of their albums have death in the name, so you know it's they're getting enough death in there. I love it. It's great. I wish we had the logo
is fantastic, and there arguably might not be a better death metal album title than The Rack.
Yeah, right?
Fantastic.
Anyway. I take the blame. People are like, what the fuck? No, Magnet, you losers. I messed up the magnets.
It's all right.
It's my fault.
You're stuck with my poor copy of Voivod script there for Asphyx. But yeah, much respect for Martin and company. Let's go to the board. Asphyx, here we go. Viking Lord 666 Houtman. Why do you need the Houtman part? Anyway, it's about goddamn time they put Asphyx on the board. Hail, Netherlands. Horror Master, it's about fucking time. These people like to swear about Asphyx. It's about time Asphyx has been mentioned. Get Paradise Lost out of there and put Asphyx as the legend. Okay. Raphael Fireblade, Asphyx for sure belongs here for their masterpiece album, Last One on Earth. Took death, doom to new heights or lows, and probably the heaviest album at the time. Pedro Enrique Piacente says Asphyx, Martin Van Drunen, best death vocalist, period. Couldn't agree more. Reign Without End. Asphyx were one of the few bands playing death doom in the 2000s when most of the originators had either disbanded or changed their style. Good point. Traditionalists.
Yes.
Sticking to the orthodoxy. Guitar Bro 221. Asphyx is the legend. They perfected what Autopsy was trying to do. That's a good point. Direct line here. Obviously from Pestilence, but Pestilence was by a more of a prog death metal band towards their later records. But anyway.
I feel if you want to make this more of a sports show, you could just start drawing lines between bands, arrows,
We need some
circling.
videos that you can get a yellow line and circle and...
That's right. We throw the football back and forth. Okay, so I think there's consensus that Asphyx belongs. Some people even say they deserve to be the legend. I don't know. We'll let that sit for a moment.
That's one I have less gripes with, because again, more than 2 goddamn records.
Right,
That sounded right.
Yeah, good point. But Lisa, we're gonna move on. Some more bands coming in.
There's always more bands coming in. Have you been on the show?
Once or twice.
So there's some bands that are contentious,
Okay.
but one that seems to be an obvious choice we haven't talked about yet.
Okay. Disembowelment.
Yes.
It's got to be an Autopsy song title, I think. But anyway, Grayson Hale says Disembowelment perfectly sums up what death doom should be. I know it's contentious because this is arguably also the starting point of funeral doom. We'll get into that. But the fast, heavy, and intense death metal sections entwined, love that verb, with the slow, plodding doom sections show the perfect balance of the two genres. Disembowelment is purely equal parts death metal and doom metal. Jason Vegan, Disembowelment only needed one album to perfect doom death metal or death doom metal. Take your pick. No need for subsequent albums, I guess. And Hari Desikachari is back and says that they only released one album, but the entire subgenre of funeral doom basically owes its existence to them. Found it again. Raphael Fireblade, Disembowelment must be here for their album Transcendence into the Peripheral. I don't know if that's a typo. Don't know the records. One of the most important albums in the genre. It was the first Death Doom album to have dark ambient elements. And lastly, Reign Without End. Is that Anathema song title? If there was a separate funeral doom chart, I'd put Disembowelment as the legend. For plain death doom, I'd say no. Okay, we have a magnet. Tell me about Disembowelment. Blayne, what are your thoughts?
Disembowelment, another great one. Very similar to Winter.
Yep.
Released one record. I don't know. Disappeared, whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a great. They were kind of the first guys to start kind of just having some weird ambient, drawn out sections of not really much happening.
Right.
But I still think on on the record, there was enough happening where it's still death doom and hasn't gotten into funeral doom yet.
Right.
There's still a lot of what you would just put on and be like, okay, yeah, this is straight death doom.
Right.
One album, Australian, so not a lot of people knew when it first came out.
Yeah.
But great album, did the same kind of thing as Winter did. Hey, here's a great album, and I'm out. Peace.
Which is interesting because you've kind of got, two bands where there's a lot of consensus around undoubtedly belong, coupled with, bands here that, have had long careers and changed their sound and evolved. So there's definitely there's a true underground vibe to this subgenre in the sense that, albums that people are really praising are the only albums that these bands put out. Anyway, but we must move on. Yes?
Yes.
Threatening
Beat you
us.
to the gun. I
must
saw you
always-
pull out that not so threatening mallet.
I know, it's not very threatening.
Nonetheless.
So a couple bands keep coming up, and even the chat doesn't know what to do with them.
Right.
Okay,
They
cool.
may have flirted with this a little bit,
Yeah.
moved on,
Yeah.
you know, whatever. Just it was a phase. It was a phase in college. So a couple of those we want to get to right now. Get your take on this.
Okay, well, first band, Amorphis from Finland, band with a long career. We actually hung out with them in Iceland when we were there for the Eisnaflug festival. Here we go. Sam Dunn, beautiful name, my friend. Amorphis, Tales from a Thousand Lakes is a death doom classic, very influential record. But since they moved on from that sound after only that album, it might not be appropriate to put them in this branch. We might have to wait in ranking the albums of this branch just to acknowledge it. Rain Without End says Amorphis is a maybe, while Tales from a Thousand Lakes is a melodic death doom album. They moved on from that sound pretty quickly. I'm not sure that album was all that influential for death doom. That's death doom either. I mean, it was a big record for the band, but was it influential for the genre? That's a good question. Matt Exile XX, early Amorphis is absolutely death doom. What do you think about Amorphis, Blayne?
I mean, this is coming up a lot, right?
Yeah.
First album, sure, for sure. Second album, still kind of, and then from there, absolutely not.
Right.
It's this weird thing with these bands, because like,
It's the same pattern. It's a similar pattern anyway.
If like you came into my kitchen and I was making cookie dough, and you'd be like, oh, what are you making? Cookie dough. And then the next day you came in, you're like, what are you making? Cookie dough. You might assume I'm making cookies. But then when it's all done and I made chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream, you're like, oh, you made chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream. You wouldn't describe me as one of the best cookie makers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's in there,
Yeah.
but I think they weren't even trying to make this genre of music. They weren't even trying to be part of this genre of music. You just caught them in the early stages of making something that ended up sounding like Death
I
Doom.
have no idea what you just said. I just want to come over for cookies.
Yeah,
actually.
right.
So,
Hey.
but anyway, Amorphis. But here's the interesting contradiction. Give me a moment. Don't pull out that mallet. Is you have bands that put out one record and then didn't put out any other records, and they're considered. It's indisputable that they're part of this. You put out you get a band who puts out a record or two where it's indisputable and then moves on, and all of a sudden there's a debate.
Well, that's,
I don't get this.
Well, because like if you're gonna talk about legends, right? What better legend is someone that just comes in, does something amazing, and then rides off into the sunset?
And then I'm like, I'm gonna go.
You know what I mean?
Start making.
And I mean, it's that thing, right?
Yeah,
Where it's like,
yeah.
I mean, Sleep put out a bunch of albums, but for all intents and purposes, they put out
I guess
one
it's difficult
album.
when the
people
particular
still-
bands become better known
Yeah.
for a different style
Yeah.
of metal. And you know, some of these the earlier bands that we've been saying that has one album, they'll never be known for. There's a purity
Yes.
to that I guess is important to fans. Okay, anything else on Amorphis,
Yep.
Lisa? Because I imagine there's probably a fair bit of debate about whether Amorphis belongs.
There
Yes?
is. There
Okay.
is.
Here we go. Aaron Henry. I don't think Amorphis fits. Even the early albums, Thousand Lakes, etc., have a much stronger melodic death current. The melodic aspect is coming up, which of course gets them confused with the other Scandinavian bands that were making melodic death metal. And Artur Felipe Castanha returns, who says, love Amorphis, but they're more mellow death, even though their first albums are death doom. I would suggest that Amorphis should live over here for the moment, because there's clearly not consensus over whether they belong.
Especially with that logo. I mean, if you had the old logo.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the logo when they were
Voted
not
off
even-
us. Simply be like, "Man, come on. What's Death Doom? What's Death Doom about that logo?
First logo, maybe. That logo, that's when they moved on.
It's almost Times New Rome and 24 Point. But anyway, so interesting. Two bands with the question mark couldn't be more different. This
Yeah.
band, of course, because they went on to do many other things. This band, because many would argue that Autopsy is actually a death metal band, full stop. Yes,
Well, if you like question marks, I've got more questions.
let's do it. Who's next then? Anathema?
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Anathema. Raphael Fireblade says Anathema belongs here, even though they are no longer a death doom band. Their album Serenades had a huge impact on the genre. And Hannes Wiedenhofer says Anathema are arguably the most talented band within the genre. Of course, they moved on and changed their sound, but their stuff is crucial. We do have an Anathema magnet. Blayne, weigh in. Your thoughts?
I mean, I'm I'm sorry to keep saying this again. One album, yeah, cool.
Right.
But I mean, the thing is, their first album I think came out in '93.
Okay.
So one of the things is they're these early influencers, but at this point we already have these bands that have put out Death Doom records.
Right.
That are more Death Doom than the record they put out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember when Asphyx's first record came out, but that would have been around the same time.
Right.
So now we're getting into the thing where they're sort of, again, just playing with death metal a little bit to get onto the whatever weird, crazy prog nonsense they do now.
Right. Well, if we brought out the font radar, I don't know. I think we might just send this over to Lisa Lattiser. Goth
I know.
territory.
I like that font. I like
Yeah.
that font. It's pretty gothy.
There's a lot of flowing lines in that logo.
There is a point being made that you can't separate the Peaceville 3, so that they have to be there.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. The Peaceville 3. Why Autopsy isn't part of that? I'm not going to let it go. I'm letting Autopsy go. It's hard for me to do that. We move on.
Catatonia.
Catatonia, here we go. Matthew Levins is back. Catatonia's Brave Murder Day is considered super influential, but they do count as their sound has evolved but do they count? It's a question. As their sound has evolved and changed, Catatonia have an epic majesty and dignity to their music, guitars that light the funeral pyre, sending up spiraling riffs like sparks through the ball. And Ackerveld's vocals, woof. Vishnu Narayanan says, I would love to see Catatonia in here as their demo Java Elohim Meth. I butchered that. And their first two albums, Dance of the December Souls and Brave Murder Day, were proper Death Doom albums. Thoughts? We don't have a Catatonia magnet, so let her rip, Blayne. Blayne, what are your thoughts?
Again, perfect example of, again, first two records, boom, Death Doom records. Third record, screw it, we're out of here, man.
Right.
But I actually like them in the mix more than others because those first two records were a lot more pure Death Doom before they went on to make, I don't know what they're making, like EDM. What are they doing now? It's nonsense.
Yeah. I've lost
keyboards.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a great one because those first two records are very, and I mean, as silly as to have to say Brave Murder Day a lot. Is that a twist on Brave New Day? I never. But anyways, yeah, again, I mean, it's the same theme, but a good one to put on there.
Again, a theme, like guys like Ackerfeld ground themselves in this kind of death metal sound, late 80s, early 90s, and then go on. Like, it's like a breeding ground for restless musicians who maybe, you know, were death metal enthusiasts as teenagers, but clearly wanted to explore other metal territories. Lisa, okay, we got Catatonia. We've added Catatonia. I guess there's not a lot of comments on Catatonia.
Not a lot.
Or are you just hiding them all from me?
No, we are at that point of the show where it's like the lightning round a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
It's like the
Here we go.
last,
Flap.
like people's last pushes for bands that haven't been brought up yet.
Got
So
it.
we have a couple here for you guys to check out.
Okay. Did I mention Autopsy? I'm joking. Not Autopsy. Okay, we got about 5 minutes. Here comes the speed round. If you want to get a critical band into the Death Doom branch of the family tree, let her rip. Here we go. Hannah Klein, Finland's Swallow the Sun. Must be on the board. Ever since their foundation in 2000, the Finns have released countless flawless records of death and doom. You simply cannot ignore their latest epic, a triple, not just a double album called Songs from the North, Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3. Not numbers. Matthew Levins, Swallow the Sun. Create death doom on a grand scale, giving you epic emotion with dark, majestic soundscapes, a slow, impending, cataclysmic orgasm of prodigious proportions. That is a good one. Noah Ripper Shocks. That's good. November's Doom are one of the most eccentric death doom bands to come out of the US, and they also gave us a unique take on the genre with acoustic ballad and dirge-like tunes. As a musician, I can say with utmost respect that November's Doom may as well be one of the best, if not the best, death doom band of all time. Before we get to November's Doom, Swallow the Sun, weigh in.
Swallow the Sun. This is a cool one because I feel like these guys are kind of beside each other right now.
Okay,
Where
yeah.
these are two bands that are super active right now, putting out a lot of records.
Yeah.
Hooded Menace is playing like pure Death Doom, classic winter, early Catatonia, whatever style. Swallow the Sun is doing something cool where those are two styles that have evolved, and they're not really changing Death Doom. They're playing almost like evolved Death and evolved Doom. So it has like that kind of melodic, more grand scale to it than something Hooded Menace, which is very stripped down. You're in a crypt, skeletons are attacking you. This is like, you know, the world is ending, but like buildings are falling down.
I think we got a few more comments on Swallow the Sun. Aaron Henry, Swallow the Sun are a fantastic band, but I don't know how influential they have been. They seem too new. Fair. It's fair. But, you know, it's a relatively small genre with a lot of bands that either put out a few records and left, or just put out a record and literally left the entire building. But let's move on. Lisa, we don't have a lot of time. We got more on November's Doom coming in?
Yeah.
Okay, Guitar Bro 221. You better put November's Doom on there, or I will come to Banger Bar with a Harvest scythe. I actually would love to have a Harvest scythe,
really
cool. As a prop, so if you're offering Guitar Bro, bring it in. That's it for November's Doom. You want to make any comments on those guys?
Just pretty straightforward Death Doom throughout their whole career. So that's another good one where, you know, they weren't like, all right, peace, see ya, after a couple records. They put out all their records. They're all really doomy. They're all really good.
Yeah.
Great pick. Great pick.
Very good. Good is the consensus. Let's move on. Not a lot of time. Matthew Levin's Acid Witch. Concoct a vile, potent broth, equal parts death, doom, groove, and sludge, with just a suspicion that someone spiked the brew with LSD. Nice. Aussie Rules 777 says, Acid Witch deserves to be on the chart because they are one of the newer bands doing something new by adding a deep purple and horror movie soundtrack influence to the genre. They kill. And Magrove Mivu says, Acid Witch is damn good, and you are doomed if you don't bring it. Acid Witch.
Acid Witch is a weird band because a lot of people were kind of mean to them for a little while there because they're basically just a bunch of like kind of fun dudes, like real hesh-seeming dudes from Detroit, who were like, let's make Death Doom and like do some mushrooms, man. And they just made kind of these like fun, silly Death Doom records, and some people are too serious and are like, oh, they aren't good enough musicians and blah blah blah. I love them because it's just like it's cool to bring fun to this genre.
Right, they did something different.
It's exact. If I had a Death Doom band, they would probably sound like Acid Witch because I do a bunch of acid and I'm bad at playing instruments.
And you love witches. Definitely getting into some territory where we're dealing with a lot of newer bands.
Yes.
We're not talking about bands that have sort of formed the genre, but that may speak to the fact that we are dealing with a sub-genre. Lisa.
You want old bands.
Yes.
Thor's Hammer
Love old
has
bands.
been brought up.
Okay.
So is Triptychon, not old.
No, absolutely not.
Incantation has been brought up.
I'd say that's a death metal band.
Those are like the last sort of
Just
gasps.
two old bands. Cyanide, Unholy. Don't know why no one's mentioned them. Straight up Death Doom through their whole careers. Great bands.
Right.
Cyanide especially. Dying Truth. Get that album. Great.
But we're running out of time. Do we want to talk about the future? Does Death Doom have a future?
Well, a lot of people have asked us if we're going to cover Funeral Doom in this episode,
Right.
and I told them we were not.
Yes.
So maybe we can talk about how that connects to this, and if we should do a whole episode on that, or are there enough bands?
What are your thoughts? Funeral Doom.
Funeral Doom is something I listen to less. Funeral Doom's tricky because like there is a lot of crossover, but like Funeral Doom, like if you want to know if you're listening to a Funeral Doom band, pick up a record and see if it's recorded at the bottom of the sea. That might be a Funeral Doom band. If you think you're listening to Funeral Doom, make sure it's not a Death Doom 45 being played at 33. That
check
might
your
be
speed.
And number three, if you really want to check what a Funeral Doom is, get a little stopwatch and time how much instruments are being played and how much weird, wispy bullshit and some chanting and stuff is going on. And then if you're still awake, at about 50%, you're hitting Funeral Doom territory.
Right. I love the formulas. It's so clear all of a sudden. Lisa, we've got one stray comment here. Is that we want to read this one out here?
Sure.
Okay. Kevin Nash's Torn Quad says, just add all the bands with seasons or sad words in their names. It's good. It's true. It's true. We love sadness. We're dwelling in the sadness here at Lockhorns this week. Yes, Lisa?
I love sadness too, but
Yes.
we do try and make people happy when they leave the show. So I think before we wrap up, we need to decide what's happening with Autopsy and Amorphis. Maybe in some sort of like actual locking of horns. I don't know.
Okay, so in light of what we've now done,
Yes.
now we've added all these other bands, we've talked about a lot. Revisiting Autopsy, what are your thoughts? Death Doom or just death metal?
It's so hard. Because they're like almost in the same position as these guys, where it's
Right.
like they've incorporated enough Doom to kind of get in the conversation.
Right.
But I mean, most people that like Death Doom listen to that band.
Right.
And is it just because it's old school death metal, or it deserves to be like you know, on the edge? You know what I
Sure.
mean? Like if you maybe like your third click on if you like this, check out this, you get to Autopsy.
Listen,
You know what
I don't think Autopsy made it for the best death metal bands. I don't think so.
I mean? Oh, then fucking get them in
fucking
there.
hell,
Yeah.
this is a great
They
band. They
deserve
deserve to be
shot.
somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm pulling rank. Autopsy is going to be on the fucking chart. If it kills me, come down to the Banger Bar. We can duke it out. If you want, Autopsy belongs simply for the fact that they are a hugely influential band. And we'll say, even though those are old, a very distinct sound that they created on that record compared to everything else. Lisa.
Do they go on top? Sometimes we put proto bands above the chart.
Is it a proto band? What do you think, Blayne? Or are they firmly part of the genre?
I think they're firmly part of the genre because
Yeah.
I mean they were active the whole time. They were doing stuff
Yeah.
and
Same year, I think. First record's
yeah,
89.
I think they were before Paradise
Okay.
Lost. Paradise Lost first actual record was 1990. Same year as
Anyway,
Winter.
we split hairs.
But yeah, I think I mean, we just always talk about them, so it's like if we're always considering them in there, why not? You know what I mean?
Yeah. They're staying.
Yeah.
End of story. Autopsy belongs. Sorry.
It's his show, folks.
Okay, where are we going next?
We're going to say goodbye.
We're going to say
wow.
goodbye.
That's kind of the end
There we
of
go.
the show.
So fast.
Huh.
Well, there you go, folks.
So much stuff I didn't get to mention.
Death Doom.
You have 10 seconds.
I have
Go
10
ahead.
seconds. Disembowelment is now Inverloch. They put out a record last year, so that's still going. Catatonia put a side project, October Tide. That's like this, so it's still going. Hooded Menace, new record coming out maybe this year, next year. Buy it. Thank you.
Somehow Blayne's voice went up an octave for his outro. Thanks for being on the show, buddy. That was a lot of fun. Death Doom, there you go. Amorphis didn't make it. Everyone else did it. Kind of did. A lot of old bands, some newer bands as well. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Lisa, Daniel, Craig, and Andrew, as always, for making the show happen. Next week we're back, but we don't know what we're going to do. It's to be determined. We'll figure it out. But join us anyway. And remember, subscribe to Banger TV. We're almost at 100K. 6 digits. Help us make it happen. See you next time.